This is an interview in the series Women Around the World, a mosaic of feminine impression and inspiration in times of Corona. My name is Cécile Masson. I'm the author of Rose Letters of Love to Life, and I'm a coach specialized in unfolding potential. I have the pleasure to share this virtual space with Nana Efua Lawson. Welcome, Nana.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. It's great to be here.
Yeah, you're most welcome. You're an occupational psychologist specialized in leadership and cultural change based in the UK with extended international experience. Nana, would you introduce yourself even further?
Thank you. Thank you for that, Cecile. So I specialize in coaching, leadership coaching, team coaching, team effectiveness, anything that's really around growth in organizations. So I do a lot of leadership development as well. I particularly enjoy work with women. So I do women in leadership work with different types of organizations in the corporate sector and also in the public sector. And also I've gone more interested in minorities in leadership and inclusive leadership in general. Lots of different strands that kind of tag on my heartstrings, and one a more philosophical and intellectual aspect is around evolutionary leadership. So how we evolve as humans in ourselves and in organizations, and how that kind of comes across in how organizations are led and in a more sustainable, responsible way for ourselves and for the planet. So bringing humanity into organizations in a deeper way.
Wow, you're building a beautiful bridge for the next question, Nana.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah, because obviously I would like to know how Corona affected you personally, but also in as a professional, looking at looking at it from a professional point of view. So just talk a bit about how it affected you personally. What did you notice physically, emotionally, in the context of Corona?
It's interesting. It's just there's a beautiful phrase that I picked up on a few weeks ago, and I've used it because it kind of makes sense. So this thing that's happened is something about we're all in the same storm, but we're in different boats. And so initially when it happened, it was that everyone trying to figure out what this means for them and noticing reactions. So one thing that I immediately noticed is, my natural, of course, it's hip tragic, and the more you watch the media, the more kind of doom and gloom it gets. But I also have a natural optimism that immediately shone through. So I was also seeing the possibilities and the opportunities that something like this can offer us as individuals, as communities, and as a global community, as a world. So personally, I've kind of had a difficult year anyway. So this was just one more thing on top of that, which meant everybody's going through this. So one thing that became certain for me is like, gosh, it seems I'm someone who thrives on uncertainty. And it really, the more I witnessed the struggle of others, the more it became clear to me, gosh, okay, well, I'm lucky to have this strength that I'm able to see possibilities in uncertainty, see possibilities in tragedy. So that's a good thing. But it's just heart-rendingly sad what's happening. And I think certainly it's bringing out the good, the bad, and the ugly. So I'm seeing great community spirit. Certainly where I live, people are much there for each other. There are things going on in small ways, happy birthday songs being sung up and down our streets for people, so community gelling. So it's beautiful things, people out there looking out for the vulnerable on a micro level. Then I'm seeing also, the bad, the bad being, rather than us, and in conversations with individuals and, also observing on a global level, rather than it being, to me, absolutely a signal of how we're all interconnected and how fragile the systems that we had comfort in and thought, they're kind of waterproof. They're all fragile. It took an invisible virus to bring us all to our knees, and we kind of we're in this space where we need to be humble enough. So the bad that is happening is that kind of the perpetuation of separation. So seeing people who should be, in powerful positions, who should be highlighting connectedness of the planet, the fragility of humanity compared to the planet and the planet's dependence on us, or the interdependence of countries. This happened in China. It seemed far away. It seemed like something that's not going to affect us. Well, it's upon us in our very homes as it is. Yet the bad is that there is that conversation around separation, which, if this doesn't show us how we're connected, I don't know what does. So for me, that's bad. And then the downright ugly, so what's going to come from this? What are we going to learn that is different, that helps us to live better lives? And, from an individual level, one of the ugly things was that kind of immediately in certain cultures going, right, let's just go to the shops and get everything for ourselves and not think about people who are more vulnerable, who might not be able to access it. So it's really bringing out the good, the bad, and the ugly. But for me personally, there's a new term, the Corona coaster. So I've got the silver lining, not silver lining, but kind of seeing the possibilities, but at the same time going, gosh, with everything else that's going on out there, it's quite possible that nothing will change. People keep talking about going back to normal. What does that mean? Because normal was not right in many ways. So I've been going through that kind of roller coaster, but actually the good thing is that I'm mostly on the up, and I realize that there are lots of people who are down there who, so how do I use what I have naturally to help people, to lift them up and to see something that can bring us forward in a more sustainable way.
When you say about the separateness, is there something specific that you're referring to within the UK, or is it something that you noticed on a global scale?
I think it's on a global scale. I think, separateness. So I think we're all universally connected in some way. This thing has brought the, health-wise, kind of how the connection that I've already mentioned. But if we, on a micro level, think of, for instance, kind of me versus my neighbor, how interdependent we are, and actually that the neighborhood I live in has made such a big difference, a positive difference to the experience I'm having. Whereas, traditionally everybody's kind of in their house. A lot of people hardly say hello to. They don't know who lives near them, or don't really connect. So there's that kind of individual community separateness. I look after myself and my family, and we're all independent. And then you have, kind of, you can take it to the country level. So in the UK, we've had, very divisive few years about what we are as a community, how connected we are, and Brexit, and should we be part of Europe and not, and for some good reasons, some not so great reasons. All that speaks to separateness. And then, then you kind of take things to the global scale. You have, what's happening in the US. And if one thing that has become so clear to me in this crisis is the disparity and inequality there is in the world. Yeah, and we should all be ashamed of it. So
disparity and inequality in access to help, access to education, or something specific?
Yeah, and access to healthcare. Seeing people, dying needlessly who don't have things. So, I mean, some countries are better than others, but you kind of see people dying on the streets like dogs. Or you also see, what's really been heartening is the recognition being given to people who under normal circumstances would be people unnoticed. Yeah, so when this crisis came, people, the key workers, the people that communities are going out and clapping for and appreciating and writing love letters to, are the people who come and collect the bins. You don't, most of the time, you don't even see them. They've done it by the time you wake up. They clean the streets. The people who are cleaning hospitals, the nurses, the importance of teachers has kind of really come into sharp focus in this age of homeschooling, and a lot of different the bus drivers, the people who keep the supermarket, the people who are stocking the shelves in supermarkets or other till of supermarkets. All of this, it's just been brought into sharp focus. These people who traditionally we call them low skilled, low paid, and I say in the past have not necessarily been paid in the right way or rewarded for the sacrifices they make. When this crisis came, they are the people who are out. The rest of us are sitting in our houses, or we're sitting in our houses, so you can be the biggest, the baddest, the most famous CEO of whatever. Nobody cared, frankly. It was these people who are keeping us going. Mm-hmm. And so the things that really matter came into sharp focus. And yeah, how do we not kind of forget that as we move back into some kind of new normal or better normal, as far as I'm concerned, if we can find a better normal.
As you are engaged in sustainable leadership, do you sense that there in the patterns that are being observed at the moment, that all of a sudden all that people that many of us don't see, or some people don't see in daily life and don't meet and don't interact with, are actually brought into more value, from teachers to carers to cleaners? Is there something that could shift radically in how they could be rewarded, valued for what they bring to society?
Yes. Well, could being the operative word there. Yeah. So there is an opportunity. But then there's also this is the back to the corona coaster, that sometimes human beings have very short memories. How do we, as we go back into, the sharp focus for a lot of countries and economies, certainly in the UK, is about how do we get back on our feet, and the economic impact of this and that and the cost cutting, all of that will how are we going to let certain things take precedence? And so for instance, for many years, the NHS, our National Health Service, has been underfunded by the very governments that is kind of, so I don't want to get into a political piece, but there is something about other priorities and other things that are seemingly more urgent take priority, that we quickly move back to normal and forget some of the really good stuff that we need to be putting a lens on. So if we want to be recognizing people and doing more for them, and kind of looking more sustainably across our societies, that kind of involves a bit more of an investment and attention and a real paradigm shift in the way that we operate. So there is an opportunity. We could, but will we?
So when you're saying in leadership terms, in literature is generally known as well that this next century that we start now, that we are fully in, is asking for more empathic leadership.
Absolutely.
And is it there that the paradigm shift could happen, that leaders that actually see the bigger scale, the more systemic consequences of taking that action and leaving the other, and neglect actually the how do you say it, societal cohesion?
Yes. I think if we look at the opportunity presented here, so we've got, I hope that it's interesting, because there's initially that some people, again, back to people being in different boats. So some leaders I know, it's kind of, this is a bit of an existential moment for them, really thinking about some assumptions they made in the past and how they run their organizations. The fact that we thought, a lot of people thought, well, absolutely sudden remote working is not going to be a possibility. In fact, 6 months ago, if you had asked a lot of leaders, that was not a thing that was conceivable, but suddenly it has been. And in there has been, some real nuggets of great examples of leadership and real empathic, empathetic leadership, where they've put the human absolutely at the center, being forced by the crisis. And some, whereas some other leaders are still trying to kind of keep business as usual going in a way that, whether it's possible or not, I'm not sure. But it's that kind of, how do you continue the having the human at the heart of how you do things. So if you put the people and the purpose, kind of be more purposeful in your leadership, how that then translates into profits that will come along. But so there is that opportunity that some leaders are kind of doing some reflection on how to do things differently. Now, if you look at kind of more evolutionary cycles of organizations, for the work of Frederick Laloux, for instance, if you look at that, the teal organizations, the opportunity for us to have a different, rather than the hierarchies and, the people at the top needing to know everything and not being vulnerable and just kind of, we have the answers. Well, if there ever was a time when we can all say nobody has the answers, because we've never been in this situation, is now. So how do you, kind of create different structures that perhaps have a bit more trust in them, perhaps have more self-managing teams, and, get the traditional leaders to be focusing on other things. So some leaders are thinking in these terms, like, what does this mean for me and how I lead my team and how I trust people? And do I need to have people in offices? Can I kind of trust that things will happen? But then, there's some who are wanting the certainty of how things used to be. So how it will pan out, I'm not sure I have an answer, but there is certainly the opportunity to do things in a more conscious way, and think of the impact we're having on our communities and our planet in a different way, because we've been through this experience.
It's a lot about assumptions, isn't it? Where, for example, you used about, home working is not possible because people will just hang around and do other stuff but work.
Yeah.
And now, generally, not in all countries, I spoke with people, and they said, people actually realizing that it's better for them in certain aspects to work from home, and in certain aspects they really miss their workmates and the culture they go for to work. But it's also helped them to be more transparent and authentically present, because
absolutely,
what you can see from the other person is all of a sudden not the office, but
yes,
the home context.
Yes.
So do you feel that because this trust has been more or less forced upon us by this virus, that it's in the trust, in that sphere of trust, which is heart-based, that there is that window, and we need to be careful that with our laws or with our actions that we possibly, bring again a frame that restricts that free energy of passionate heart. Not sure if I make myself clear.
No, I think absolutely clear. I think what this has done, in a way, it's presented to me, there's a gift in here somewhere, where we've evolved in a culture where, and quite often when I'm talking to people I work with, I'm like, how you're not two separate people, you are one person. So, but there's a lot of this perception, or this, we thought we had these identities that are, this is me at home and me at work. And we are in a situation where that just got smashed together and we did not have time to plan for it. So therefore it's brought to me, you are suddenly in someone's home. You're working with them, but you're in their house. You're subject to the noises that come into their home. You're subject to the cats walking across the computer screen. You're subject to their children knocking on the door and bursting in. And you're a witness to all of that. And that, to me, humanizes us. So that inaccessible CEO or exec team, depending on how they play this, they've kind of opened things up. But there's another angle to this, I have to say, where it kind of can create more separateness. So, an example recently I heard of, a top executive sitting in their Californian mansion, with beautiful views and probably, very, very comfortable indeed, kind of being on a video call and talking about how brilliant and very comfortable and wonderful lockdown is for them. Well, that's kind of not really connecting to the 12, 20,000 people who might not necessarily be in that situation. So kind of as a leader, being conscious of what the message you're sending is. But the fact is, because we've been humanized, you're no longer this person with a professional mask on who walks into the office. You're in your home and things happen in the home that you cannot entirely control. So how can we use this gift? Because that's just kind of giving people access to us in a different way, and we can just kind of be a bit more authentic and real. How do you use that going forward? The fact that we've been through this, and hopefully we will definitely get to the other side of it as well. If we do go back into the office, how do we relate to each other in a different way than we had in the past? But it all depends on how we're dealing with it right now. Because if you're not using the technology right, or thinking more wholesomely about what people are going through in their different boats, and putting systems in place that get people to feel they belong in your organization, then it might be going the other way.
So it's about being authentically present. It's being consciously present. And it's being transparently present as well.
Absolutely. And leading with purpose, meaning, and values. That to me is very, it's important. Because, what is important to you, what really matters to us. When crisis hit, we stripped everything down to what matters to us the most. For me, it was absolutely clear. I'm isolating with my mother. There is no way I'm going to put my family at risk. So everything else, income, everything else, gone. Whatever it mattered came to the core. Connecting with people that I'd lost contact with. Kind of being there for people who are going through a tough times, and people I know have had COVID, and being there with them virtually and making myself present for them as and when they need me. That's much more important. And if you're building real connections with people, be they your colleagues, your peers, your team who work for you, and really being there for them in a human way, the rest of it will come. It will not come immediately, because we're in this situation. We just need to manage our expectations on what's possible, but it will come.
As you're stressing the word human way, what straight away came through my mind is that in a human way rather than in a strategic way. Because in certain organization, people are with other people strategically for whatever reason. And you're saying that it should just be.
It should just be.
They should just be all there is.
Yeah, and it will come. It's yesterday I was talking to a leader, and they kind of work in the sales team. Of course, sales targets have had to, what would have been 100% in the past, and now 50% is really good. So they've got to reimagine how the expectations, but at the same time, there's this huge pressure on. These are the targets, and they're going to be very ambitious for the next quarter. How are people going to do it when, kind of the client base is not as it used to be? So is that kind of, for me, what I've seen really works is kind of rather than having a 6-month or quarterly target, for instance, people going on a week by week, because again, people, I'm coaching people who are usually very, very productive, efficient, high potential. And then, it gets to certain weeks and they're like, I'm not quite sure, I'm not being productive, I'm just not 100% there. And it is okay not to be, because we're in this situation. Mm-hmm. So then having organizations that are having, extreme expectations of people rather than taking it as it comes. Some leaders that I know are being quite effective are, it's a week by week situation or month by month, not the big thing that you set up at the end of 2019 that you're going to do in 2020. And the more how you look after people and make them feel like they're cared for now will pay dividends in future, because people are much more inclined with this trust to go the extra mile. To do what is needed. Yeah.
Obviously, you're a coach. Is there anything that you could share with people possibly looking at this film? Little practice that you have for yourself or that you offer to others, like a minute or two that you could share with me in this case?
Good. Yeah. I think there are two things. There's something about, I'm a firm believer in the fact is we all have this innate, strong wisdom within us. We have knowledge, the knowledge of the universe within us, if only we can just stop our kind of separate minds from overthinking. Yeah, so there's that something around how do you, amidst all of this, tap into a quieter place. And so some mindful practices around, just stopping, doing something very different to what you are, or if you've got an issue you're grappling with, stopping and doing something very different. Journaling, letting your consciousness stream, being in nature, and just kind of going out for a walk, doing something that is connected to the planet in some way, just kind of observing, nature has not looked more beautiful than it has this year for me. So it's a gift every time I kind of go out and I see, I don't know, bluebells growing in a forest or whatever it might be. It feels much more special. And so doing something that kind of takes you away from your own head, because we have these brilliant things that makes us, the people we are and how we built this planet and being a dominant species, shall I say. But at the same time, they can be our biggest weakness, because we can often think that we have everything, so long as we're in our head, we fix the problems. And that sometimes is not the case. Sometimes letting go of it will present something, something from the deeper, still waters that you would never have thought of if you had been trying to grapple with it on your own. So that's something. So stopping that thinking.
So really moving out of your head by going into nature and appreciate its beauty.
And
it's
tapping
beautiful.
into something more still and deep and connected. The other thing is around, we each have our stories, but we are not our stories. We are, there are different parts of us that have evolved over time to survive whatever it is we needed to survive as we've been growing up. But we're not any of those things. But all of those things are part of us. So if we're able to really look and integrate what's brought me here, and there's no such thing as this, do this and you're the perfect leader. Everybody is their own leader or professional in their own way, and you need to bring what is the unique story that you bring to whatever it is you're doing. So being able to integrate all these different aspects of yourself and actually somehow in a safe way, wherever you're comfortable, giving other people access to it helps to really connect you to people and to teams. And so that to me is something that I do with individuals and teams, where we can, strip away some of the burden of the mask that we tend to wear around and become a bit more authentic. And once you know a little bit more beyond the mask about somebody, naturally empathy is built. and naturally you care for the person, and deeper relationships are formed. So therefore you're having more honest conversations because you kind of have a sense of the intention of that person, rather than sitting in our own beliefs, our own judgments, our own assumptions about what's going on.
Nana, thank you so much for taking the time to do this interview. I'm most grateful. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for the journey we've been on. I wasn't quite sure where we're going to go, and we've kind of gone along different paths, and it's been a joy talking to you. Thank you. I'm looking forward to continuing to have these conversations as things evolve. Thank you.
Thank you, Nana.